Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast, where we hear stories and have conversations about life in Christ, everyday discipleship, and ways that we as men can give life to others. My name's Tom Henderson, the founder of RESGEN, and I'm super pumped you're tuning in for the podcast today. Before we get rolling, I want to remind you that tickets for the RESGEN Men's Summit 2023 are on sale now. This half-day event, which takes place on Saturday, February 4th, goes from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. and brings over 1,000 men together for 5 hours of encouragement, laughter, and impact. In addition to myself, this year's speakers include Dallas Cowboys chaplain Jonathan Evans, Pastor Ricky Jenkins, comedian and pastor Ted Cunningham, and New York Times bestselling author John Acuff. Tickets for the summit are only $30, and you can grab yours to join us either in person in Sioux Falls or online at resgen.org. And while there, you can also pick up your tickets for RESGEN's couples event, Date Night Comedy, which is happening prior to the summit on February 2nd and 3rd. All right, I'm excited to introduce you to someone who's been a friend of mine for over 15 years. Joshua Duncan is a licensed counselor at Stronghold Counseling Services here in Sioux Falls and also serves as a lead pastor of Center of Life Church. Joshua also has a phenomenal laugh and is probably one of the most joy-filled human beings I know. On today's show, Joshua and I discuss 3 of the topics that he finds men want to talk about the most during their counseling sessions, along with some of the reasons why men find it difficult to be open and vulnerable with others. We also talk about 5 key questions that we can ask ourselves that will lead to greater self-awareness and personal growth, and some simple ways that we can care for our mental and emotional health. This is going to be a very helpful edition of the Giving Life Podcast, so let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Joshua Duncan. Joshua Duncan, dude, you're here.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Welcome to the Giving Life Podcast, my friend.
Oh, so glad to be here with you, Tom.
Man, it's seriously like when I shot out the invitation, I was like, man, I hope he says yes. I hope he says yes.
Why wouldn't I? I'm booked. I gotta meet.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to get into all that, but first, as an introduction to listeners and viewers, just tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do, a little bit about your kind of family history, and then we're going to get right into it.
Well, Tom, my name is Joshua Duncan.
Yeah.
I've been in Sioux Falls probably 36 years. My family moved here when I was 2. My dad moved up here. He was going to Sioux Falls College and got asked to pastor at that time Friendship Baptist. Yeah. And so grew up in Sioux Falls guy, high school, middle school, college, grad school, the whole shebang. And now I am a senior pastor, Center of Life Church. I'm in private practice at Stronghold Counseling. I've been doing that for a little over a year now, and working on my PhD in developmental psychology with a focus in leadership and organizational development. So that fills my life. So I'm in the middle of finishing up my dissertation, trying to stay motivated with this last push. My goal is to be done in June 2023 to finish my educational career.
You're not gonna find one more academic.
Sometimes I have to tell my mind no, because I think about maybe I should go get my master's in this or learn, because I'm a learner, and so I've enjoyed learning, but I need to just stop.
Okay, so is that kind of what motivated you to get your doctorate in the first place? Because that's a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah.
To go and say, hey, I'm going to pursue my doctorate, and while I'm doing all these other things, and when you are in full-time pastoring and counseling, it's not like you have a lot of free time.
Right.
And so then you said, let's just throw some doctoral studies in on the side. So was your motivation sheerly because of you are a lifelong learner, or was there some other decision that kind of led you to that?
Yeah, really, it's really been the Lord, because honestly, I would have been done after high school. I mean, my motto in high school was if I didn't have my homework done, my books were staying in my locker, and I would try the next day in homeroom to get it done. But really, people seeing God's purpose on my life and speaking into in every season, because it's been a challenge in the sense that I've worked full time, going in undergrad, doing ministry, volunteer basis full time, and even then working at Central for that time in youth ministry. Mm-hmm. So I've always worked full time with school, and so that's always been like the challenge and the balance of the management of energy, having a lot of irons in the fire. And so, but ultimately I found that going to school helped me to become a sharper instrument that God could use to help other people. And so that's what that learning piece from Strength Finders gave me that push of understanding of who I am, to say, wow, this is a blessing that God has put that in me to be able to have a desire to continue to learn. Because one of the things I dislike the most is writing papers and math.
And writing papers about math.
Right. Oh my gosh. Statistics is terrible.
Yeah. Okay. So before we're like, our main focus is going to be on the counseling side of things and men's mental health and a lot of that stuff. So that's going to be our main focus.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I do want to talk a little bit just on your role as a senior pastor at the church, because you've been doing that for how many years now?
Yeah. So officially I was put in the senior pastor role probably a year and a half ago now. And prior to that, I was executive pastor, and then just in other places holding a youth pastor position, ministry role for 10 years. I did youth ministry, which is how we came to know each other. And so so my role really there is I really, as the trainer and equipper of other leaders, because that's really our focus, and our dynamic is where our niche as a body of believers in Sioux Falls and in the region is to provide opportunities to equip and train the body to do the works of ministry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And I know that, that is what has always been one of your passions, is equipping, whether it be students, or adults and all of that. But another one of your passions is to really have the church be a place that is seen as a place for healing and unity, whether that be denominationally, because you've worked in a number of denominations. And I've always loved that. I mean, that's one of my biggest hearts. How do we bring denominations together and focus on the main thing? Right? So creating unity in the body denominationally, spiritually, racially, all those kinds of things. So I'm wondering, as you look at the church today, and just in your opinion, as you've been in the church for a long time, do you feel like at least the church in our region in Sioux Falls is on a pretty good trajectory there? And then, just kind of some thoughts as to, what are ways that all of us that are part of the church can be a part of that unity and healing?
Yeah, I think, it's a great question. With the church body, as I've been in Sioux Falls in this area for, again, most of my life, one of the things that I've seen which helps to foster unity is when the leader has unity within themselves. Meaning that they've addressed their insecurities, they've addressed the challenges that they may have with connecting with other people, for the bigger picture of the kingdom of God and not for building the kingdom of man. And one of the things that I think has historically been a barrier is when people have those insecurities about bridging the gap of unity, because people find that they can get hurt in relationship, because in any time there's always that risk of being hurt in relationship. So what I've seen more so is that it's come a long way, but then in some ways it's stayed stagnant as far as the unity in the body, because I think anytime you have a shifting of leadership and new leaders that come on the scene, it's almost like that reestablishing of relationship. And when people aren't aware of themselves and what is working on the inside of them, then oftentimes those type of things can get in the way of relationship. With the lack of vulnerability with self means I'm not going to be vulnerable with you. If I have some insecurities within myself, those insecurities are going to show up in my peripheral relationships. And so I think those are some of the things I've seen. And so Sioux Falls has come a long way, but there's still some areas I think that, of course, there's growth and development, but it all comes back down to that individual and them working out their own soul salvation. And
don't you think too, like in growing up in the church, as you did and I did, a lot of times it's so simple for us to live a life that is very compartmentalized. And so it's difficult to have unity within the body when we're not even necessarily presenting our true self on Sunday mornings or on Wednesday nights when we're worshiping next to someone, or we're saying, hey, how you doing? And you just have this massive fight on your way to your way to church, and then you put on the happy face, and you may be struggling, whether that be relationally in your home or with things going on interpersonally, but yet that we don't feel the freedom to like be real, or do we trust that this is a place that we can be real, which then, of course, impacts the body as a whole.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, the snapshot I get to see in counseling, because as I counsel couples or individuals, leaders, or people that work in the church, you get to see like, oh, this is some behind the scenes stuff that, like you said, you would never know is going on. So you're saying if this small, minute population that I get to see is maybe representative of what the larger church body looks like in the issues that they're challenged with but not seeking help, then you wonder, why are sometimes people not as committed to serving in church or attending church, but not understanding like there's so much of a war that's going on 6 days out of the week. And then you have people trying to show up that are empty, and you can't give anything you don't have. And so what we're tasked to do is really come into a message of wholeness, of a holistic approach with our message, mind, body, soul, and spirit, which is one of the things we focus on in my ministry. Is like, we want wholeness, we want to practice rest. So we're okay with, in the summertime, if we meet not as much corporately, but we can say, okay, this Sunday we're just going to take off, focus on your family, rest, go out of town, go on vacation. Don't try to run back to church on Sunday after, trying to be out of town, because all those pieces are important to practice rest so that we can show up well. And I think that sometimes the challenge is that, how do we show up well if we're not resting?
Yeah, that's good. All right, well, you kind of just alluded to, your work in counseling, and so I want to read something that I read off the website that just talks about you personally. It says this is what you say on there: journeying with people to assist them in finding their place of peace as they learn more about themselves is what I love to do. The journey forward is inward. And I love hearing stories and helping people to become more self-aware so that they can get empowered to fully live life. I mean, that's a big mouthful there.
Yeah.
And it's loaded. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. So what does that mean, Joshua? What is, when you say this is what you love to do, break that down for me just a little bit.
Yeah, so that's a good, I'm glad you brought that up, because if we can change the narrative of our story, then we can change the outlook of our life and how we show up. And so oftentimes, if we're not self-aware, which means emotional intelligence is not strong, then we don't know why and how come I do what I do. And so with all that, I'm helping people understand, how come you do what you do and how did you get here? And so sometimes I go on the journey backward with them, looking at the relational world that they grew up in, to tell me, how did you get here? Now, what's the way forward? And so this phrase I say is unbecoming to become. So I'm unlearning things so I can learn new things, taking old things off so I can put on new things. And so, and then when I use the word peace, the word shalom, nothing broken, nothing missing. Because that's oftentimes how people show up in the counseling room. I'm broken and I feel like things are missing. I feel inadequate. I feel there's deficits in me, and I see the picture, I see the image that I want to become, but I don't know how to build a bridge to cross over to that. And so when I say journeying, it's however people show up on the journey, wherever they're at in their journey. If they're in the early stages of being honest with themselves that there is a problem, or if they're in the middle stage, or if I've tried counseling before. So wherever they're at in that journey of their life to being whole is the self-awareness piece of how can I serve you in helping you to become the person, the idea that you feel like is in your heart that you want to see for your individual self, for you as a couple, for you as a leader.
Yeah. So you said something there that I want to touch on real quick before we continue on. And you said maybe they've tried counseling before. And so is there something, I mean, that statement I've heard before in lots of conversations. Well, I tried counseling, but it didn't really work.
Yeah.
Is that due to maybe them not being ready to put forth the work that is necessary to work on themselves? Could that be because they didn't have the right counselor, that there wasn't a good match there, a good, connection between those two? Or is there, I mean, I'm sure there's other reasons, but what are you finding when people say that they've tried counseling before, but it just didn't really work?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's a number of those things that you just said. which in my initial statement when I sit with people is, if after a couple sessions that you find that I'm not your person, it's okay, because you do want to find the right person that you feel comfortable to connect with, because it's about them establishing a healthy connection with an objective person so that they can heal in a space of relationship where they were injured from past relationships. And then sometimes they get a counselor where they may not connect with them. That counselor may be out of their scope of practice, meaning that they're in an area where they're not strong in, or they just feel that counselor just isn't their right fit. And giving people permission to know that it's okay, that it's just like finding the right restaurant that you want to eat at. It's okay to shop around for a counselor where you can really connect with, and also that understands you, that is helping you get there. And then the other part too is that, it may be that the person isn't doing the work outside, because that's probably the most important piece, is the work that you do outside. Because you can sit and have conversations all day, and you can pay me to have conversations, and it's great. But the truth of the matter is what you take from those conversations and that you put into practice when you leave out of that room and you come back, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly. It is that work that you do day in and day out to bring transformation to your life.
Yeah. So a lot of that requires a lot of conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
After the conversation you've had with the individual that, in the office. And so for guys especially, a lot of times we don't necessarily like to be alone with our thoughts. We don't like to ask ourselves some questions that could cause us to maybe be real with some answers we don't want to give or that we don't feel real comfortable with. So you and I, when we got together just to connect probably about a month ago now, and just visit about this and just life and all that kind of stuff, we talked about you gave me kind of 5 questions that you said that these are questions that can really help lead us to a better self-awareness and more personal growth and all of that kind of thing. And I do have those here, but do you remember those 5 questions?
You probably should read them.
So this is the question. So, well, here's the question. Listen, I told you had a great laugh, didn't I? All right. So, but here's one of them. It's like, what am I feeling?
Yeah.
So like, guys, that's kind of an uncomfortable question for us to say, like, what am I feeling? What, why is that such an important question?
Yeah, it's such an important question because the bridge from thoughts to behaviors is feelings. Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. But if I can't identify how I'm feeling, I'm not going to understand why I behaved the way that I do, or I reacted or responded in the way that I did. And so the more I can understand my feelings beyond the 5 words of I'm sad, mad, happy, or angry, or glad, or whatever, that I can, if I understand, I'm really disgusted, I'm really overwhelmed, or I'm really elated. And so when we can really have those more descriptive feeling words, then we're better to have clearer communication, because feelings help to bring clarity in communication. And so when I don't understand how I feel, then it can muddle my communication. That's why I always love the movie. It's on Disney, and I always recommended it when I worked in the treatment facility. We always showed this movie when we got into our emotional unit. It's called Inside Out. Oh, yeah. And it's really psychologically almost accurate in how the brain develops emotions through developmental stages. And so you see there's a scene, and I would encourage you to watch it. If you want to develop in your emotions and understand emotions, watch the movie Inside Out. It's on Disney. And what it shows is the feelings of the mom, the daughter, and the dad. And it shows you which emotions are in charge. And if you're paying attention to the movie, the 2 emotions that are in charge for the mom are different. The 2 emotions that are in charge for the dad are different. And for the daughter, the mom, the emotion that's in charge is sadness. For the dad, the emotion that's in charge is anger. And for the daughter, it's not yet established which emotion is in charge, because they're all trying to run the preteen's mind. And so you have to ask yourself the question, what emotion when I wake up is in charge? What emotion in the middle of the day is in charge? When I'm at home, that's in charge? When I'm with my family, when I'm with my spouse, what emotion is in charge? Because that then will influence how you show up.
So we live in a day where it's a lot about feelings.
Yeah.
And we're told just trust your feelings.
Yeah.
Or the statement I know that I've made, the mistake of saying when I was a dad of younger boys, and saying, well, you don't have any reason to feel this way.
Yeah.
Because you have so much, or whatever the case may be. So how do we know, like, are feelings always real? Like, I mean, are they sometimes told to us? Are they sometimes like that we live such a feeling day, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that's a good statement, because really what you want to help people do is to validate their feelings and not invalidate their feelings.
Yeah.
Because it is true that they may be feeling this way, but why? How come you're feeling that way? And in that statement, to say, well, you shouldn't feel that way because you have this. Well, then it teaches us to invalidate our feelings about a thing. And so the thing about validating our feelings means we're acknowledging this is how I feel, but what am I going to do about what I feel? Mm-hmm. Am I going to allow that because this happened to cause me to give up everything? Or am I going to challenge now my behavior, look at my behavior and say, what is my behavior going to respond to? Mm-hmm. Am I going to move from this place of sadness and move into a place of stepping out of it by doing a healthy coping skill to move from it? And so what we're challenged with is teaching people how to acknowledge their feelings, validate their feelings, because what happens is then I feel like I got to stuff my feelings down. Mm-hmm. And I begin to teach myself, well, because of this last encounter where I felt invalidated, I'm no longer going to share my feelings. So I say we start to create the rules that we live by. So then you say to people, well, when this happened, I felt really ashamed. So then I said, I'm never going to love somebody. I'm never going to open myself up. So people create these rules that bind them up, and they never live free because of this painful experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So one of the emotions that men often struggle with is anger.
Yeah.
And whether that's a short fuse, or, they've seen anger displayed, in not healthy ways, previously in their life. And so, like, for someone that is feeling like that they have some anger, that they would say, man, if I were to be honest, mm-hmm. one of the feelings that really is maybe a little bit more in control is like the dad in that show Inside mm-hmm. Out that is on the angry side. Mm-hmm. Is the right question to then ask yourself is, okay, so I'm recognizing that I'm feeling anger, but having this little internal conversation with yourself of but why, and then trying to trace that back.
Yeah, how come I'm feeling angry?
Yeah, and so mm-hmm. Is it possible for that person to just kind of roll that tape back and go through that on their own and just kind of see a healthy way, mm-hmm. a healthier way of responding to that anger? Or is that something that is like, because we always want to see the best in ourselves, even when we sometimes feel the worst mm-hmm. about ourselves, I think sometimes.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're struggling with that, since we have a lot of dudes listening, of course, that's the main audience for us is, so let's just say someone is, man, I really do feel like anger has a little bit more of a control of my mm-hmm. life than I would like. Yeah. What would you recommend for that?
Well, so you're talking about a skill of self-reflection. Mm. But the other piece is anger is the secondary emotion. And so in that, as a person that's listening and saying, how do I work through my emotions to become more aware? I have to say, I became angry because I felt hurt or disappointed or not heard or frustrated mm-hmm. or overwhelmed. And my response was anger. And so that's the key part to say, what made me angry? Because I wasn't angry when I first engaged you in conversation. I was hurt. I was sad. I was overwhelmed. I was anxious. I felt like I was in despair. Mm-hmm. And then I became angry because now I didn't feel hurt or didn't feel accepted or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so that was the first question. What am I feeling? Another question is, where am I?
Yeah.
What's that question all about?
So when you talk about where am I, it's where am I at in the space of the path of transformation that I want to be on. So am I at the beginning, the middle, or end? Do I feel stuck? Or where I'm at with even acceptance of this is how come I got here? So that type of question helps us to figure out, if I know where I'm at, then I know where I need to go.
Okay. What am I thinking?
what am I thinking? It's again another self-reflective question, because if I can understand my thoughts, the depth of my thoughts, then I can better learn how to communicate to myself and to others. This is what's been going on. Because oftentimes the unhealthy skill is I want to numb myself or disconnect, or we say disassociate from my thoughts by escaping in drinking or porn, whatever it is,
anything,
unhealthy thing, entertainment.
Yeah.
Hobby, people, social media, swiping and swiping, to not think about what I need to think about.
And so like that, like one of my favorite scriptures, Romans chapter 12, it talks about that we are to be continually having our mind renewed.
Yeah.
Let our mind be transformed by, and so it's really teaching ourselves that we need to think.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think that it's always kind of the joke that if you have a husband and wife sitting in the car and she says, "What are you thinking about?" And the dude's usually like, "Nothing. Like, I'm literally not thinking about anything."
Yeah.
And she's like, "What are you talking about? I got all this stuff going on over here. I'm constantly thinking," or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is important. While that may be true, because a lot of times, as dudes, we can check out.
Yeah.
And we can not think about anything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is that we do need to engage in some thinking, though.
Yeah.
Especially if we're trying to make some adjustments or grow and become more personally aware and experience more personal growth.
Very true, because you can't process anything unless you think about it.
Right.
It just stays stuck. It's like you got all these packages backed up, and they're like, well, they got to get shipped out. Well, they got to get processed first with the right material, right?
Right.
That's thinking. Thinking processes things through and out.
Okay. So, what am I feeling? Where am I? What am I thinking? This is a great question. What's going on with me?
Yeah. It's an honest thing. Shakespeare said, "To thine own self be true," or the proverb says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." So what's going on? I got to look at what is the lay of the land, so I can see now what resources do I need to do, what things do I need to change about myself, what things do I need to confront, what things, where do things look like, so that way I know how to assess, and count the cost of what's the cost of this transformation. So taking a look at it says, this is now my plan of action. I can put my plan in action because I know now what it looks like, and I'm being honest.
Yeah. And again, these aren't questions that you're asking like 1 through 5. You're going through this list of, these are just different questions that you can be asking yourself as you experience different feelings, and like this one, for instance, says, what happens when I'm feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah.
Like, what happens when I'm feeling anxious or inadequate or not good enough? And I think that is one of the things that I have so many conversations, a lot of times one-on-one at coffee shops or over lunch with dudes, and they'll just, a lot of times guys don't feel like they measure up.
Yeah.
And then what is their response? So, man, I don't feel like I measure up.
Yeah.
And because of that, I do this.
Yeah.
I feel this. I try to numb or whatever. But there's strength when we are really able to have that conversation, even with ourselves, of saying, okay, when I am feeling anxious or when I am feeling like I don't measure up or that I'm not enough, what do I do with that?
Right. And that's so true, because we're either going to withdraw and isolate or build a wall or disconnect, because then I'm just going to settle outside here because it's easier to do that. It's comfortable. It's safe, because then I don't have to get hurt. I don't have to be asked to do something that I feel like I can't do. And so then it creates more frustration. It's like a frustration ripple, because now we're not meeting the expectation of the role or the position that we've been looked at to fulfill. And so then it's easier. Then people just coexist. We just coexist, or we just exist in life with no real engagement.
Yeah. And that's, I think that as men, sometimes we feel like we have to be productive all the time. We don't want to admit that we have hurt.
Yeah.
Like you just said there, like we can stay outside of here, or we can not do this one thing or have this conversation because that will keep me from getting hurt. But as men, oftentimes, we put on this front, or wear this mask, that says, you can't hurt me, or I don't hurt because I'm a man. Which I think that vulnerability has become something that is a little bit. It's definitely more talked about than ever before.
Yeah.
I think over the last several years, it's become much more of a topic of conversation, and I do feel that we are on a good trajectory with men becoming more vulnerable with one another, especially as they feel that there's a safe space to do that. But why is it that even with the suicide rate for men is almost 4 times higher than the suicide rate for women?
Yeah.
But yet men struggle so much more to enter a counseling office or to be vulnerable. Is that just because of social norms? Is that just because of, they were told as a kid that they shouldn't cry? Is that, why are we at where we're at with that?
Yeah, I think, and that's a great question. And I think it's what you all just said. It's many different facets, but I think comes down to the internal working model that's been developed by what we've seen on it as it relates to vulnerability and the permission to be vulnerable. When you say to a young boy, "Don't cry," or "Be strong," your tears don't. Men don't cry. What it creates is these core beliefs about emotions, or emotions are weak, and so we grow up with these core beliefs with that. So if I'm told that emotions are weak or don't cry, hold it in, then that's how I'm going to operate. And so then what happens when you don't take the steam out? It eventually explodes. So same with emotions. So all those social stigmas about how men should be strong and brave and not show that we're bleeding or showing emotion has caused internal damage to where I think so many men, well, where do I go? What do I do when I'm feeling overwhelmed? And so you just give up. What can you do? You just give up, because if I tell you I'm feeling this way, are you going to use that against me? Are you going to weaponize my feelings against me? Are you going to hear me? And so those are, I think, all those things you said, I think are the big reasons why men struggle with this being vulnerable.
And then they bring those, especially if those aren't dealt with early on. We're all products of our past.
Yeah.
But we don't have to be prisoners.
Yeah.
That's one of my I feel like ever since I kind of heard that.
Yeah.
All the things that happened in my past and all of that. Like, I brought a lot of my emotions that were pressed down and pushed down. So I brought a lot of those into my marriage.
Yeah.
Which then caused my marriage early on, and even just a lot of the things of just trying to process, okay, how was I raised, parenting, lack of parent involvement on at different levels, and then that, of course, I was trying to figure out how to be a parent myself later on after we had kids, and so just learning how much that if you're not really taught how to let those emotions out in a healthy way, that it can be detrimental to your relationships long term.
Right.
And so as we've all had different things happen in our past, as we've all dealt with different kinds of emotions, how do guys just start to get those emotions out in a healthy way? Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah. So I would say the key part is, finding a safe space to do that in, with someone that is safe, someone that is empathetic or vulnerable, and being able to feel like you can trust that you can let those emotions out and be heard, and not be like, "Oh man, what are you thinking? That's stupid." But being around people that have an understanding, that have depth. So it's finding those type of people that you can emotionally relate to, that are willing to be vulnerable as well. So that way, so it's finding a new model, finding role models that live there, that live in a balance of emotions and thoughts, and are willing to share how they feel. So people with great emotional intelligence. Those are the type of people you want to put around, because you have to transform what the internal working model is. That's what you're talking about, is that you didn't have those internal working models of what does a healthy father look like? What does a healthy husband look like? What does a healthy, pastor, leader look like, until you got around the thing that you're like, oh, that's what that looks like. So that's why Paul said, when he wrote those letters, he says, follow me as I follow Christ. Be imitators. So it's talking about mimicking, in a healthy way. Mimic me, because this is then how you develop you by following the path or the pattern that I'm setting forth.
Yeah, which that leads perfectly into, three of those, the three kind of topics or things that you find yourself talking to men most at in your office. And one of those things is that guys will say, like, they don't have mentors. They don't have other men in their life that help them emote.
Yeah.
That they feel comfortable with. And so at RESGEN, as you know, we call them bands of brothers, and we encourage men at every, men's lunch we do, the men's summit, which of course is coming up in February again. But where we challenge men, encourage them more so, to find a couple other men, so 3 or 4 men meeting together on a regular basis for the purpose of encouraging one another, encouraging as followers of Christ, husbands, fathers, friends, and challenging us to live in the light. To live in the light and obviously grow in our walk with Christ and live lives out in the open. And so would you say that is one of the key things that men lack, as you're in conversation with them, is deep friendships where they feel connected?
Yeah, I'd say so. That is one of the things you see lacking because it's easy to go to like a bowling league or a dart league or a sport team and play and do these activities, but what about the sitting down of, like, how are you doing? What type of husband are you being? What type of friend are you being? What type of brother are you being? Those are depth questions. But as we talk about in the earlier part of those questions that we asked about,
I was just thinking about
if
that,
you're not asking yourself those questions individually, then you're not going to ask anyone else group-wise, because you can only go as far in depth as you are with yourself with others, because I can't give anything I don't have. And so if I'm not living deep, I won't have relationships that are deep, because I'll be scared of vulnerability. And if I'm afraid of vulnerability with myself, I'm not going to do it with others. And so that's why good. What you're talking about is so important. But somebody has to break the ice and say, but I want to live deep, because I want my son to know how to live deep. And that, I think sometimes in the church, we see a lot of women emote, but we don't see a lot of men emote. And so then it's like, well, that type of crying in church is for women. That would be the thought process. But truthfully, the emotions, God created emotions. And we have to be able to say, but we have to give our brothers in Christ permission to emote and say that's weak. That's weak. That's not weak.
That's not weak. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we are the church.
Yeah.
I mean, we are the church, and God desires that His bride, which, I mean, obviously, yes, it's the corporate church.
Yeah.
But as we enter our workplaces, as we enter our communities, our world every single day, we are the church, and He wants us to be healthy.
Yeah.
And that means we have to enter into those conversations with ourselves personally and with those other individuals. And I love what you just said about saying that if we're not willing to go there personally, it's nearly impossible to do that with another person. Yeah, we can ask them how they're doing. We can ask them, hey, where are you at? What are you thinking?
Yeah.
But then when that question's answered back, we're going to be like, well, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Everything's good. Why? Because we've told ourselves every day, I'm okay. Everything's fine. I don't need to worry. It's all good. It's all good. And we've become so good, especially I think in the Midwest too, of saying, hey, how you doing? Fine.
Yeah.
Hey, good to see you.
Right.
How you doing today? Great. I mean, we have all these surface level conversations, and that teaches us that when anybody asks you how you're doing, to say, I'm fine, as opposed to like stopping going, do you really care? Do you really want to know how I'm doing? I'd probably stop people. Oh man, I got to stop asking that question.
Yeah. Well, and so the thing I practice, the sensitivity of the Spirit, is really like, what am I really discerning? I know this is what you're saying, but what am I discerning from your countenance? What is the Holy Spirit really pressing me to ask you of how you're doing? So sometimes I find myself, when people give that automatic answer, I'm like, but no, really, how are you doing? Because that presses them. Because when people will automatically go into that performance mode. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
But you're like, but something in me, in my spirit, saying that no, like there's something going on here, really, because it's in those subtle things. And so that's the power of the Holy Spirit to really take us to a deeper place with people, to say, but what's really going on? Because I felt I don't sense peace. You're telling me you have peace, but I don't feel peace is coming from you. It's beyond being, I'm an empath. Everybody says they're an empath, but no, but the Spirit doesn't lie when you have that sensitivity to ask people questions, which oftentimes I try to allow the Holy Spirit to lead me in that space when I'm sitting with people, counseling them, whether it's in my practice or in church, but to say, Holy Spirit, guide me here because you know the truth. You're going to lead me into truth to help people to live in truth.
And if we're going to do that, we got to make sure that we're open to and have margin that will allow for those types of things to happen. It's just kind of like having a group of guys saying, hey, we're going to meet together, and develop those deep friendships. That takes time.
Yeah.
We've got to create time. We got to create space, and we live in a world where we all just say we're so busy.
Yeah.
But yet what we're not doing is we're not taking the time and investing that into where it really does need to be invested in so that we can grow individually as well as collectively. So, but building in that margin is such a key component to allowing for those kinds of conversations with individuals, but also allowing for ongoing conversations with people that we really do need in our life. It's not just it's not that we just only want friends or want deep relationships. We actually need them.
Yeah.
And part of it is just admitting that we need that. That's for some guys, that's probably the first step, is saying, I do need that.
Yeah. That's why Hebrews tells us, let us not forsake the assembling of ourselves. Yeah. Because when we get together, there's a stirring, there's an excitement. But when you're stirring something, you're not just stirring from the top. You're talking about when you get in and you're stirring something, you put that stick way down in the middle so you can get all the seasons in the water stirred up so it goes throughout. And I believe that's the stirring it talks about. When I'm with you, there's a deep stirring that happens. The deep calls unto deep that happens when the brother and when the body of Christ gets together and the dead things come to life from that stirring.
And that's why I think that when you think about online worship versus in-person worship, the online live stream experience is meant to be supplemental. Yeah. Not in place of, right? Yeah. And I think that we became so comfortable with the online experience of COVID and all that kind of thing. And it's just like, it's just easier to just stay at home or whatever. And on occasion, that's great. But that's where the being together with the body of Christ is so crucial. Yeah. In the large collective sense, worshiping, hearing the word and all that, but then breaking it down into these smaller groups where we can really, glean and encourage and challenge one another and help each other grow. All right. So that was one of the things that the dudes talk about a lot in your office with you. And then one of them, another thing that they often say is, that they don't know how to be that. Yeah. They don't know how to be the husband, or they don't know how to be the father or the leader or the employee, boss, friend, whatever. Talk about that for a second as far as like when someone says, well, I don't know how to be that. What are they getting at there?
Yeah, so it's like the image that, their spouse, whether it's in the sense really an emotional image that they're referring to oftentimes because they didn't have that model for them. They had, I know how to be a provider. I know how to give monetarily, and do the normal things. But the emotional model that my spouse may be asking me to do, I don't know how to do it because I never saw it. And so they're tasked with, what does it mean to be empathetic? What does it mean to show understanding? What does it mean to show self-compassion? And so they're coming into those vulnerable spaces in my office to say, I need help in understanding what it means to emote in a healthy way and respond in a healthy way. Because that's when, they're gonna, the fear comes on and their fight or flight response comes on when they're asked to do something that's not in them. Because I can't do anything that's not in me. And so that's where that question points to.
But they can learn. I mean, we can all learn how to do that. Because like you said, even as you think about it, like I'm just thinking about, guys that are listening right now and they've got younger children. Yeah. And they can learn how to model that for their kids so that their kids are going to be better at that than they are. And so is there something simple? I mean, I always try to simplify everything, right? Because I think that's I'm more apt to do something. If it's like, hey, here's one simple step or here's one simple way to do this better, to model this for, those that are in your home. So like, I just think about that statement. I don't know how to be that. Like, I don't know how to be that for her or for my kids.
Yeah.
Is there just like a simple step that can help people learn that? Or is it not simple? Is it?
I think it's simple and complex.
Yeah.
In the sense that, when you can ask yourself, how do I feel? And then be able to share how I feel verbally. I feel great. I feel sad. You make me feel, I feel great when I'm around you. Or I feel like when you do this, this makes me feel this way. And when you model that language in front of your kids, even if it's a disagreement, but you're going to teach your kids how to walk through unhealthy disagreement or disagreements.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when they don't see that, they think, oh, mom and dad's marriage was perfect. They never argued, or they don't learn how to argue in a healthy way. And so by just being able to, they call them I feel statements. By practicing I feel statements with yourself, you can practice them with others.
Yeah.
And that's probably the simple, complex thing. Now, the thing to do is to learn the multiple languages of how you feel, which is a great app that's out there called How Do I Feel?
Oh.
It's on, it's for Apple and Android. It's called How Do I Feel? And one of my clients told me about it, and you're able to track how you feel. You can say, have it ask you in the morning, at night, as many times as you want, and it has many emotions, and you can say, this is where I was at when I felt this way. This is what I was doing when I felt this way. And it tracks your emotional pattern. So, but it also teaches you emotional intelligence and self-awareness of how you're feeling.
Interesting. Okay, and then one other thing that they often talk about, based on our conversation that you and I had, was that when the statement of we don't have a roadmap. We don't know where we're going or how to get there. So, and again, so does that go back to not having a model to follow? Or is that just because of the uncertainty of our world? Is that just because we often have an ideal of who we need to be that is like some ideal that we'll never even be able to come close to hitting? I think about one of the books that I read this year that was just so influential in my life was a book called The Gap and the Gain that talked about gap thinking versus gain thinking and how so often we live in the gap, meaning that, we have these pictures, these ideals created in our head of what a marriage should look like, where we should be at professionally, what this vacation should look like, what our kids should look like, whatever. But it's often this ideal that is so, pie in the sky that it's never going to be able to be hit. Well, then that just causes us to feel discouraged. And then the real danger of it is that we then project that onto all of our other relationships.
Yeah.
And so versus gain thinking of measuring backwards and saying, man, but look at how far we've come. So I think about this statement of we don't have a roadmap. What does it mean when dudes are saying that?
Yeah, when they said I'm a roadmap, it's like, I know my destination, but how am I supposed to get there in a safe, timely manner, right? And so, and I always say the statement that decisions lead to destinations. So what decisions do I need to make that's going to get me to that destination that I'm being asked to take us to, that I'm being asked to go to? And so when they come in, they're really saying, this is overwhelming for me. This is causing me anxiety. This is causing me distress. And I want to be there, but I don't know how. And so that question points to when they come in the office, they're making the first decision of asking for help and gaining resources. So that way they can get there in a timely, reasonable manner, and find the fulfillment when they do get there.
Yeah, that's okay. Got it. All right. So, this has been amazing, dude. And we've only got a few more minutes that we can hang out here together. But the roadmap thing is just such an interesting concept to me because what I like is you see this destination, but not knowing how to get there. And it's all these decisions, but so often we overlook how a lot of our destination is determined by all the little decisions that are made along the way. We think it's just like these really big ones.
Yeah.
But it's just, sometimes it's just, consistency making one small decision at a time that will ultimately get you to where you want to go. And I'm a huge God's timing guy. I'm very impatient. Okay. I want things done yesterday. That's the way that I often, kind of live my life, unfortunately, is that I do want things done yesterday. But sometimes our timeline, a lot of the times, our timeline is not the Lord's timeline, but it's faithfulness in those small decisions along the way that I think is so crucial for us to really grab a hold of.
Yeah. When I think, and I think about that when you refer to the roadmap, the easiest thing I can give people, what I show them in my office is there's a theory called cognitive behavioral therapy, and it talks about core beliefs. And so in our core beliefs, because we live out of our belief system, the three things the core beliefs look at is, what do you believe about yourself? What do I believe about my future? And what I believe about others? Because those three thoughts generate how then I'm going to think, feel, and behave. And so if I can address my core beliefs about how I believe about myself, how I believe about my future, and how I believe about others, then I can really create a roadmap to get where I need to go. Because, for example, when I sit with people, I ask them, do you like yourself? And if they say, no, I don't really like myself, by me not liking myself, it's going to affect how I view my future, because I'm going to be afraid to step into opportunities that come before me or new relationships, which then affects how I view others. I'm going to have a high mistrust from others, or I'm going to think people don't like me, or I'm going to have a lot of high social anxiety. And so, but if I can adjust that one core belief about what I feel and think about myself, then I can change to a positive way how I view my future and others, which then my thinking, my self-talk will change to a positive place. Then my emotions will move to a more joyful place. And then my behavior will be one that has confidence and boldness, which then helps me to create this roadmap of transformation. So by, like you said, by doing the one thing, by changing, what do I think about myself?
Yeah.
What do I believe about myself? That's the one thing. If there's anything that you take away, is ask, how do I feel about myself? Do I like myself? And how can I move into a positive image of what I think about myself?
Right. And a lot of that, of course, is we'll have a much more healthy view of ourselves if we also think about how God sees us, right?
Yeah.
And we know that when God looks at us, he sees a masterpiece that he created for a purpose of a relationship with him, and he's got good and a future for us. He's got all these, and he wants to be in partnership with us for his kingdom work, regardless of the work that we're in. So I'm interested in knowing, and we've only got time for a couple more questions, but I'm interested in knowing just how you balance the faith component of counseling and the brain and science component, because I know that when I was going to my counselor earlier this year, it was very important for me to have I wanted a counselor who was a Christian, because I wanted to have that common belief system and the importance of faith, but also a good grasp of understanding of how the brain works. Yeah. Because, the brain is very complex. Yeah. you know, and it's got a whole bunch of, RAM and storage up in there, of 46 years of stuff, right? And so, our brain and how it works in combination with faith, because of course it's God who created our brain. So I'm just interested with the way that you incorporate faith and the whole counseling studies that you've done, and what does that look like?
Yeah, because the whole foundational piece about counseling and faith is to help people come to the original blueprint of, I'm created in the image of God. And so some of the things that we struggle with psychologically, emotionally, cause that disruption with us being able to fully be that image that God sees. So my favorite scripture to really tie that in is 3 John 1. It says, "Beloved, I wish above all that you would be in good health, and prosper as your soul prospers. And so we talk about the word prosper, which means be on a good journey. And then we talk about when it says soul, it's talking about the suke, the psyche, the mind, the will, the emotions, the affection. So it's saying, I want this part of you to be on a good journey. And so God is always concerned about our mind. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. It begins with the mind. To be carnally minded is death. To be spiritually minded is life and peace. And so God was always addressing the mind in the beginning of transformation to become like him. It's when he talks about my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways. He says thoughts first, because if our thoughts are not his, then we're not going to make decisions like he would want us to, and then we're not going to walk in the way or be on the journey that he wants us to be on. And so when we talk about the integration of faith and mental health, it's about saying, let's line our mind up with how God thinks about us. Let's line our emotions up about how God feels about us, according to the Spirit, that the Spirit man is in charge, and that the Spirit man is the one that dictates our thoughts, mind, wills, and emotions, because the Spirit man is alive unto God. And that's how we bring order to this. That, you talk about, well, how does someone get these things in order, or are my emotions in charge? But I have to say, no, my spirit man dictates to my mind, to my emotions, that we're gonna live in the peace of God, that we're gonna live in the joy of God. And that's the part where I try and help people get to it in seed planting, because not everybody's a believer that may sit before me or live out of that, but seed planting to help them to see that the spirit man is the one that is in charge.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, Joshua. I appreciate that. All right. Well, one final question before I give you the floor for what we call the final word here. And I told you that was coming, 60 to 90 seconds of whatever the Lord lays on your heart to share. But again, I know that this may be a loaded question, may be difficult, but I told you I like to simplify some stuff.
Yeah.
Simplify some stuff. And so what are some simple ways that men can care for their mental and emotional health? We do carry a lot of pressures.
Yeah.
There is a lot of feelings of being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Men are struggling with anxiety and depression, different things like that. And so we need to do a better job of finding simple ways, even throughout the day, to care for our mental and emotional health. So what would you just encourage guys with on just how they can do that on a regular basis?
Yeah. So I think the key part for it is self-care. Self-care meaning, how do I take care of myself? Take care of this mind, body, will, and emotions. So for example, myself, I make sure I'm working out 3 to 4 times a week for an hour in the gym. I'm making sure I'm having at least, out of how many meals a week, I'm having 90% of them are healthy. It's okay to have some cheat meals or cheat snacks. But also, and then being around like-minded people that can, iron sharpens iron, that you can be around. So I'm looking at my activities are healthy. The people I'm around are healthy. And the internal behaviors are healthy. So, but all that is self-care, and it's okay to rest. It's okay to rest. It is okay to rest because your body needs it, and busyness will cause you to stumble and fall. So, the important thing is having a self-care routine. Whether no matter what you do, a self-care routine makes sure that this body, the only one that you have, this temple, is taken care of, and so that's the thing I would really encourage men to do, the practical thing. So ask yourself, what's my self-care plan?
Yeah, because it's not the same probably for everybody.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. Some people, they want to fly on jets and go to places around the world, If they can do that, they can do that.
Yeah.
But whatever your self-care plan is, it's tailored to living in rest, because that is what it does. It helps you to live in rest.
Yeah. So the person that struggles with self-care because they feel that it's selfish.
Yeah. It's going to be very challenging.
Yeah.
Always is. Because that's the first thing I present to people when I'm sitting with them. I'm like, what's your self-care plan? Or if you really feel selfish by doing these things. No, it's not selfish. it's how you take care of yourself, because you can't give anything you don't have.
Yeah, can't care for others if you don't care for yourself. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the key part.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, Joshua. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, all right, man. This has been so good. I'm so appreciative of your time today. I'm just thankful
so good to be with
for
you.
Your friendship and that we've had for so many years. And you truly are. I said in the intro that you have to be one of the most joy-filled people that I know. And then I told them how great your laugh was, and they even got to hear it a couple times on this. So that's awesome. All right. We are out of time, but I want to give you a time for the final word. One last shot of encouragement, challenge, whatever the Lord lays on your heart for listeners before we roll out today.
Yeah, I would say thank you, Tom, so much for your time to be here with you. One of the things, probably the hallmark things, the message of my life, I've been on this healing journey probably for the last 8 years, and it's well worth it. It's well worth it in vulnerability, honesty, correction, self-correction, and having people in your life is so important, because it's so worth it to be free internally from life challenges, from me, abandonment, shame, codependency, all these things. One of the greatest mentors I had that helped me to start on this journey, he's passed away, J.C. Chambers. But all of that, my own pastor and mentor, Pastor Judy Shaw, were great instrumental people, and my parents were great instrumental people, which leads me to the message of my life is unbecoming to become, and not being afraid to unbecome all the things that you thought were great, all the things that served you well, but they weren't meant to be a part of your destiny. So that's my challenge, is to allow yourself to unbecome, to become the thing that you were created to be. Yeah. And it's the best place to be, because in purpose, there is life and peace. In purpose, there is life and peace.
Yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that it's always easy.
No.
But when you lean into that work,
you
find out that the work is well worth the time and effort and energy that you put into that. Yeah. And so, well, brother, thank you again so much. I'm so appreciative of your time. One of the things that I love about these conversations is this is a lot of the kind of stuff that we really want to incorporate at different levels into the Men's Summit, which of course is coming up in February. So hopefully all you listeners are planning on coming and joining us on February 4th for the Men's Summit. And but this has been well worth my time. I've gotten a lot of this. This has fed my spirit today, and I can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you so much and what you do for the community of men. It's so necessary and so needed. And so I'm looking forward to the summit as well.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Love you.
Thanks again for joining me for my conversation with Joshua Duncan today. As always, if you found the episode helpful, I encourage you to share it with others that may find it helpful as well. If you'd like to connect more with Joshua, you can find him on Facebook, on Instagram, and at strongholdcounseling.com. Lastly, don't forget to head to resgen.org to reserve your spots to join us on February 4th for RESGEN Men's Summit 2023, and on the 2nd or 3rd for our couples event, Date Night Comedy. All right, thanks again for joining me today, everybody. We'll see you next time for another episode of the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast. Until then, continue being men whose life in Christ gives life to others. We'll see you soon.